Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Now, recording a daily show and ensuring that things don't get stale can be quite tricky. But I always try and mix things up a little and make sure that for every William Shatner, Wendy Williams, Sony, IBM or Adobe, I'm also careful to cover as many startups, inventors, and support as many people as I can in the tech community, especially if I think they can offer you lovely listeners value. Now, one of the most frequent questions I'm getting at the moment is around starting your own podcast. Now, I am helping a number of people launch their own, but as I do this, it quickly occurred to me how different everyone is. Some will say, Neil, I don't care about audio, I don't care about editing or uploading to Libsyn, I just don't want to know about it. I just want to record a conversation and I want you to manage the rest for me. And I do just that. But others will say, can you give me a few pointers, or how can I improve what I do? How can I make the editing process easier? And today's guest can help you with all that. Anybody listening today will be able to learn audio production with Mike Russell using Adobe Audition and other editing software. He has a respected career in radio and a wealth of experience to offer. So I invited him on the show today so he can talk about how to make your voice sound better on podcasts, audio editing tips and techniques for voice-over talent, how to produce radio jingles, creation of audio for DJs, vocal effects, sound effects, anything audio, he is your guy. But he is not just the resident audio guy. You may recognise his voice because he is the voice of the intro and outro to every episode of this podcast. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to the Isle of Wight here in the UK so we can speak with Mike Russell from Music Radio Creative. So this is the part of the show where I usually ask the guests to introduce themselves, but you're the only person to appear on every episode of this podcast alongside me without even realising it. So can you let the listener into a little secret on who you are and what you do?
Thanks, Neil, and it's great to be on your show. So, yes, Neil Hughes. So I'm Mike. I'm the creative director at Music Radio Creative, and I make great sounding audio. Or I try to make it. I've always looked at it as constantly learning. So I'm learning as much as I can. What I focus on is teaching people how to make great audio on my YouTube channel, and what I like is just working with the community of audio producers, creators, podcasters around the world who often come back to me and say, well, it's good the way you did it, but you could maybe do it this way. So I'm always refining my technique, but I love what I do. It's all about audio for me.
And just for anyone that hasn't picked up on the hint that I was coming across there, is that you did the intro and outro to this show, don't you?
Yes, that's right. I can't believe it's been so many episodes now. How are you finding it? How long have you been podcasting for now?
I think it's 3 years and we're approaching 450 episodes. So I'm chasing that number 500 then.
Wow, that's an amazing milestone. Most people don't get past, episode 7? So
is that right?
Yeah, well, 7 is the magic number. If you stop before 7, then that's it. But if you can keep going past 7, you might just keep going on. I think that's the magic number in podcasting.
Oh, okay. I've got podcasting blood in my veins now. Now, you've worked at quite a few radio stations. I've got to ask, what was the opening that got you your first gig? And what stations have you worked at during your career?
Gosh, yes, long and varied. So how did I get my first break? Started very early. I was 13 years old, but before that, I was a little boy playing with bedroom radio. I guess we can go more into that later if you'd like to. But at 13, I joined hospital radio. For those listening outside the UK, it's kind of like every hospital or most hospitals in the United Kingdom have a hospital radio station that broadcasts to the patient at the hospital. It's a great way to get experience. So I worked there for many, many years before eventually it was the late 90s or mid to late 90s, I should say, about 95, 96. And local radio was really kind of blooming and lots of stations were coming on. And one came on in my local town. So I managed to get work experience there and eventually eventually they trusted me to go into the production studio and start creating jingles. So that's how I got passionate about that. And eventually I thought, I really want to be on the air. So eventually then I got a break at the local radio station to do the 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. shift.
Oh, the graveyard shift.
They threw me on that to see how I did. And I've never looked back, and it's kind of morphed into today my own business, which is very much serving people in radio and podcasters and DJs and so on.
Now, one of the things I love about technology and this digital age in which we all live in now is the fantastic opportunities available to all of us. I mean, I'll let you into a little secret here that not many people know. Now, when I was at school, I created my own radio shows on a TDK C90 cassette. Well, I think it was a CD30 because obviously C90 cassette would be too long.
Yes.
But then I passed them around my class and I called it, I think it was Radioactive. You see what I did there?
That's great.
Now, before I left school, I still remember vividly, I had a meeting with my careers officer and they said, Neil, what would you like to do? And a 15-year-old me sat there with a straight face and said, I want to be a DJ and I'm interested in learning from the bottom, getting involved in hospital radio. Her look was absolutely priceless. She says, I don't think we can help with this. So I said, well, I'm interested in writing. And I was told my English wasn't good enough and just to accept a YTS scheme in IT. Now, as crazy as that sounds, if I look back now and join up the dots, I'm now publishing my own radio show and writing for a living. It's funny how you always find your own way, isn't it?
You do. That's right. And it's. I think it's all about passion as well, because you're clearly passionate about technology. You enjoy writing, like you say, the podcast that you have now that's been going for a few years and so many episodes, that's serving your kind of radio DJ hosting passion. So it's brilliant when you can get to that stage where you're doing what you love.
So after earning your stripes in radio, what was the catalyst for starting your own business? Can you talk me through your story and how you went from starting your career back in, I think, 1995 on Tunbridge Wells Hospital Radio to running your own successful business right here, right now?
Well, thanks, Neil. So, I started at Hospital Radio Tunbridge Wells in 1995. Before that, I had my own bedroom radio station. So anyone who ever came round, when my friends came round, it was like, you've got to go on the air and do a show, And I remember going to, I think it was before it was even Maplin, in the UK, we had these electronic stores called Tandy. Do you remember Tandy?
Oh, I remember it well.
And I got an FM transmitter. And I'm not sure how legal it was, but they sold them. And I was able to broadcast to my street and to a radio station. So that was quite good fun. But then, yes, eventually I went through the ranks. I worked in most sections of radio. I worked in production. I worked for a while, actually, when it was 96, 97 now, I think, Capital Interactive, what is now Global Radio in Leicester Square, London. I was working on their websites for a bit. So I got kind of experience in every corner of radio. And I've been on the air. I've done breakfast shows, and I've produced in London, in Birmingham, in your home territory, Neil, for BRMB, as it used to be known, up in Manchester in Australia. And then finally, I got to the stage where my passion was really falling into, I like to be on the air, but, it was something that was not quite there. I didn't feel whole, like this was it. Yes, I'm going to be on the air for the rest of my life. So that's where the whole audio production thing came in. And I've always been doing that throughout my radio career. So then eventually I started up a business. And the main reason I started that business was because I was talking to a friend one night. And I said, do you know what? I do voiceovers occasionally for radio and presenters in the UK, but I'd love to have my voice on air in America. How could I do that? And 2004 or so, and he said, well, why don't you just, put your voice online, put a demo and put a buy now link and see if anyone buys it. So that's how it all started. Very rudimentary technology, PayPal link back in the day. And then it's turned into Music Radio Creative, which I have to say started really taking off in 2011 when my better half, Isabella, came on board and took a look at the business sense and said, right, let's do it like this. Let's take on some more voices. We can't just have your voice. We're not going to grow if we have one voice. So, it's been a great journey, and I think I'm still on the journey today, which is wonderful.
So does Isabella have a history of radio as well?
Absolutely none. Which is funny. If you'd asked her, I suppose, 10 years ago, will you know what makes a great sounding jingle? She'd have said, absolutely not. And now she actually is very close to the coalface because she plays a big role still today in the quality control on the audio we put out as a company. So she'll know immediately what sounds good and what sounds bad, and she'll know something that's been produced by a producer, and it might sound good to most of us, but she'll say, no, that's lazy production. I can hear that. So she's very involved in that kind of stuff. And yeah, she's gone through originally working in the banking industry now to really pleased that we get to work together. It's wonderful.
Fantastic. So I've got to ask, how much has the audio landscape changed since you very first started out?
Well, definitely. I mean, technology has played an amazing role. You were talking about C90s or C30s earlier,
Yeah.
and using radio stations I used to work at, mini discs and burning CDs. I mean, we just have none of that now. Reel to reel. I even worked in radio when we had reel to reel tapes and splicing instead of editing. Gosh, in Adobe Audition, or Audacity or whatever it is you use, being able to, just make a cut and move things around. And if you make a mistake, move it back or undo it. And if you spliced it in the old days, it was on the floor and you had to go through loads of tapes to try and find it. So yeah, digital audio workstations have changed the game for audio producers. MP3 files, WAV files, all of that changed the game again. The fact that we kind of can store unlimited audio now in the what is, I guess, the cloud. We never have to lose any audio we've created ever. So it's amazing. And also, going to the business sense of it, I suppose back in the day before all of this technology came into play, I would have been, if I was running a business like Music Radio Creative, I would have been sending CDs out to clients and tapes out to clients. Imagine how costly that would have been with postage and things getting lost in the post and customer service. Now it's as simple as uploading an MP3 file, through our website. We've got technology to immediately inform the client that MP3 file is ready for you to download, and it's constantly there on our servers. So people can re-download it if they lose it. Whereas back in the day, if they lost their CD, unless you kept an archive as well, it's gone forever. So massive change, I think.
Really agree with you there as well. And I think something else is that anybody can now be an author and write their own book, whereas previously they would have been very difficult for them to do that. They can even broadcast their own video channel on YouTube. And equally, podcasts, you can broadcast your voice. All you need is a microphone and a computer, and that show can be beamed all around the world instantly. It's phenomenal, isn't it?
It is. You, in a sense, you are the radio station, or you are the program director of your own show. Nobody else is in charge. Nobody says, hey, this is a good idea, but it's not going to reach a mass audience, therefore we won't put it on the air at our radio station. You can just literally put it out online. And it does take a bit of work. You do have to market it and promote it and share it with friends so that it gets out to people. But if it's good quality stuff, then I think you'll rise to the top.
Now, podcasts have been around for 10 years. They're not new. But, I mean, do you think they're only just going mainstream now? And what is the future for podcasting, in your opinion?
That's such a good question. I think podcasts have been going mainstream the last 5 years. To my knowledge, it's been a repetitive phrase I've heard the last 5 years. So. But I like the fact that still today, people are discovering podcasting for the first time. And that could be someone who just downloads an app and finds this whole world of content that exactly matches what they want to know about. And some of the big players in other industries like radio and other audio creators, and they're saying, hey, this is not a bad idea, this is quite a good idea. So the more people that are just discovering it and getting excited, I think is a good thing. I still think it's very much a meritocracy, so I still think we're going to see the good people rising to the top, and the people who get into it for the wrong reasons, who are like, oh yeah, this is the new way to make money, great, okay, fantastic, start a show. And you and I know it doesn't work that way. And so the people who are in it for the right reasons are going to stay in it, I think. And then those people, there's going to be a lot of kind of peaks and troughs as some people get into it and think, oh no, it's not working, it's not making me any money, or they've got the short-term view rather than the long-term view. But as you know, I mean, some of the successes from your podcast, Neil, tell me a little bit about what you've experienced from podcasting for 3 years now.
I think that one of the biggest things that I've actually realised is it's the adoption through mainstream audiences now. And I think podcasting has always been quite difficult and cumbersome for the average user. So I don't know, the idea of syncing your phone to iTunes, or you must have an iPhone, or you must have this particular app, or if you've got Android, you need this app. And I think now with people like Spotify, well, with companies like Spotify getting involved, it's really opening it up even further.
Yes.
And I think even though we've all got any song, any album since the dawn of time, we can have at our fingertips. I think we're getting bored of playlists. We're getting bored of those same 20 tunes listening on our way to work. And I think we're also starting to realise that if you go out for a run, if you go to the gym, if you're stuck on a 30-minute commute, actually you could be learning or you could be soaking up information in ways that you could never imagine before. And that's got to be more productive and better use of that dead time than just listening to those same 5 tunes on the way to work in the morning. That's something that I'm really noticing from listeners and people around me that I know. Is that something that you see as well?
Indeed, yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. People, it's like as a person who used to work in radio, I very seldom listen to radio anymore. And that's kind of an example, I guess, of the old format where you have the hour clock and you have adverts at 20 past and 40 minutes past or 20 minutes to, and then just before the news bulletin. It's predictable. You hear the same songs over and over again. And I think, people are craving for more. It's, you want to hear something that I guess pertains to you and your world and your likes and your interests. So when you find you can almost create your own radio station, as I guess some tech companies are trying to do. They're trying to stitch it all together so you get your local weather and something that interests you, followed by maybe even a song that you like. I mean, one of the things I like about Spotify, you say they're integrating podcasts very well, is that they have some crazy algorithms. I don't know how it works, but I get my Discover Weekly playlist. And they're getting pretty good at discovering tunes I've never heard before that I quite like. So I think we're in a very cool place at the moment, just with audio in general, music, spoken content, all of that stuff. And I mean, radio is going to have to do a lot to keep up with that. And I'm not sure how that's going to play out yet.
Yeah, definitely. Because once you've got that one platform where you can dip in and out, and I feel like a podcast now. No, I feel like my playlist. Then it all falls into place. I mean, before we started recording today, we were talking, for example, about cryptocurrencies and the big learning curve around that and trying to stay up to speed because it moves so quickly. Yes. So, I mean, there's a podcast I listen to by Carter Thomas. I think it's Coin Mastery. And every day he'll talk through what's been going on in the market over the last 24 hours in a language that everyone can understand. Yeah. So for me, when I go take my dog for a walk and I can pick up on that without having 10 tabs open and trying to work out what's real and what's not on the internet. Little things like that it really makes a difference to you, doesn't it?
It does. It definitely does. And I love it.
So as we're just starting life in 2018, many will be thinking of launching their own podcast. I mean, what's the best advice that you can offer that will enable anyone to get up and running without breaking the bank?
That's a really good question. So if you want to get up and running, I think the main thing is just go for it. People talk a lot in the podcasting space about audio quality being important, and I do believe that. And obviously getting your content on point. So if you've got a burning desire, something you think you really want to talk about, it's a case of jotting down what those first 10 episodes might be about. Looking into a microphone, but you don't really have to go nuts to start with. Something I think in the US, a microphone I hear spoken about a lot is the ATR 2100. In the UK, I think it's the Samson CQ2U or something like that. Might have got that wrong, but something along those lines. And those are around, $50, 50 British pounds to buy if you want to start out. And then just put your idea out there. I mean, there are a lot of podcasting courses out there now. It's hard to know which is the real one or the right one. But I mean, I've always mentioned Cliff Ravenscraft as a great tool or resource to go. I know he's now morphing very much from being the podcast answer man to having his own brand, helping people start their own business. But still, I think some of the tutorials he has out there and some of the information he has on his website at podcastanswerman.com are still very helpful today. And he's certainly the person who got me started and helped me to get started with a podcast.
Absolutely. I think something that a lot of people get carried away with is they think that they must have a $500 microphone, and you just end up being that that guy that's all the gear and no idea. That's not
Yeah.
right. It's about the content as much as the microphone, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, as I head towards episode 500, I've picked up more than a few bad habits, but I'm conscious that I need to move away from that that Blue Yeti mic and Audacity to edit my podcast. But no offense to you, Mike, I'm not an audio geek and I never will be. So this is one of the big reasons that I invited you on today, because I've read about your Adobe Audition podcast presets, which sounds like just the thing that I've been looking for. But I find myself with more questions than answers. So can you walk me through what benefits your Adobe Audition podcast presets, what they will offer, and how easy it is just to get up and running?
So it's a great question. And I mean, you say you're using Audacity, as I know a lot of podcasters do. So that's great. I mean, if you've got a workflow that works for you so far, the idea of first and foremost making the switch to Adobe Audition, why would you do that? Is because I believe Audition makes your life easier, so it makes things a lot faster. What I've aimed to do with my podcasting presets is to make it even easier, so that when you go into what's called the multi-track in Adobe Audition, and you have various different tracks that you can put audio onto, I've labeled each track as to what kind of audio should be on that track. So the first track should be the podcast host, the second one could be the guest, the third one is for talk over music, the fourth track is for jingles and drop-ins and bits like that. And on each track, what I've gone through and done is added some effects to each track to do various different things to the audio. So EQ it, compress it a little bit, add some hard limiting, make it so that it meets the exact loudness standard that you need, so that essentially, it's the difference between the waveform looking all spiky and all different in audio volume quality to being a nice, easy to listen to podcast with some nice processing on it. And by the end, you can just kind of mix it down and upload it to your media host. So that's what it aims to do. And there are other things if you want to dive deeper, like I've added adaptive noise reduction, which say if you've got a noisy, hissy Skype call, it can help pull some of that stuff out. If you are talking over music beds, I've got some what's known as side chaining, which auto ducks music as the host talks over it. So that's something you want. But of course, that tool, and I have other presets for audio producers and voiceover artists. They're always a starting point. And the best way is to use your ear, and maybe even if you do choose to use my presets, is to look at the settings I've chosen and maybe just tweak around with them and just hear how it changes the audio. Because there's nothing better, I think, in my opinion, than actually learning what things do. But I know, as you say, Neil, not everyone has time or even has the passion to want to learn about those things. So that's kind of where I step in and say, well, okay, here's a good starting point. This will be a good sort of starting template to help you sound better.
And are there any big learning curves, would you say, from making that step from Audacity to Adobe Audition?
Yeah, I mean, it is different. So you need to relearn shortcuts. I remember for me, it was the other way around, because I went from using Adobe Audition forever, even since it was Cool Edit Pro, to thinking, okay, a lot of people are using Audacity. I should probably give it a go so I know what people are talking about when they say I use Audacity. And I moved over to Audacity, and it was a learning curve for me. The shortcuts were different. The icons were different. I mean, it all did the same thing in the end. I just needed to know different ways of working with it. But there is that initial learning curve, I guess. But hopefully, I mean, some of the videos on my YouTube channel might help people who need to quickly get to know something. And if you just type how to do X in Adobe Audition, hopefully you'll find a helpful video on YouTube. And it's the same with Audacity and other editors. I got into last year, 2017, I really got into using Logic Pro for the Mac, and I just love it. And I started searching YouTube. Every time I was getting stuck, I was like, how do you move a clip in Logic? Or how do you time stretch in Logic? How do you reverse in Logic? And someone I kept coming across for Logic was a chap called the Music Tech Help Guy. And his channel's fantastic. So I kind of been binging on his content to learn Logic. So yeah, it's fun.
Where would we be without YouTube? Anything breaks, anything you're unsure how to do, it's straight to YouTube, isn't it?
I had a tap break the other day, so I went on and found a plumber who showed me exactly what I needed to do. It's amazing.
Now, I believe you're hitting the road this year as well and are going to be attending quite a few events. So if anyone is listening, can you just explain where they will be able to find you this year?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Neil. So obviously it's the start of the year. So I've got pretty much everything planned up till the end of March so far with regards to speaking. Other things in the works, but nothing. Obviously, I'll put the details on my social media when there's something new comes up. Probably, I'm guessing by the time this episode is released, I will already have spoken at the European radio show in Paris. That was towards the end of January, and then at the end of February, I'm speaking at Social Media Marketing World, which is in San Diego. That's organised by Mike Stelzner and his team at Social Media Examiner, talking about audio quality, making your podcast sound great, along with Ray Ortega, who's another great podcaster from the US. And then in March, I think it's 22nd, 23rd and 24th, VidCon heads into its second year here in Europe. It's already been going since 2010 in the United States, in California, but they're into their second year, and I'm doing the only session at VidCon Europe on podcasting this year. So hopefully spread the word to some video creators at that event that's taking place in Amsterdam. And then there are various other events that I'm looking into, or I'm in talks to either speak at, or I'm considering attending myself. But like I say, as I sort of learn what those events will be, I'll definitely stick them on my social media.
I think we've probably inspired a few people to get themselves up and running with their own podcast today. So whether they're looking for help with presets, intros, outros, voiceovers, jingles, can you remind them of your website details, social channels, and the best way to actually reach out and contact either yourself or Isabella there with any additional questions based about anything that we've spoke around today?
Thanks, Neil. Really appreciate that. So if you want to get into the world of what I'm doing with audio production, I teach how to make audio. That sounds good, doesn't it? how to make great audio, mainly using Adobe Audition, but I do occasionally head into some other audio editors, and my channel is youtube.com/musicradiocreative. It's all completely free, the stuff up there, and the stuff going all the way back to 2009 on that channel. So youtube.com/musicradiocreative. And if you want to reach out and touch base, best way to do that is on Twitter, and I'm at iMikeRussell. At iMikeRussell on Twitter, just like, I guess, Apple fanboy, iPod, iPhone, iMikeRussell.
Excellent. Well, I'll add all those links to the show notes just so people can find you nice and easily. Now, as we race towards nearly 500 episodes of this podcast, and you really helped me out right from the very beginning by producing that intro and outro, and you really made the sound of what it is. So a big thank you for your support way back when I started, and also for coming on today. So I really appreciate it. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Neil.
I'm so glad that Mike came on the show today, because audio production is his passion in life, and you can hear that how he genuinely loves helping others sound great too. And Mike is also the driving force in new media and promoting the UK podcasting scene over here in the UK. And he's one of those humble guys that works tirelessly for the online community and helping others, and also helping that whole new media scene. But he doesn't talk about what he does. He's a bit of an old school hero in my eyes. So if you do need an intro, outro, or just looking for audio tips, check him out on his YouTube channel and stay in touch with me. Let me know how you get on. Having heard Mike's voice on every single episode, it was also great to finally speak with him today. But if we have left you with more questions and answers, remember, you can record a question with your voice over at techblogwriter.co.uk/podcast. Or you could email me at techblogwriter@outlook.com, or tweet me at Neil C. Hughes. But that's it, I'm afraid, gang. But have no fear, I will return tomorrow. But all that's left for me to say is a huge thanks for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.